In a world where demons and humans live separated, a small boy appears lost in the desert. His name is Mori, and he holds a mystery no one understands. When a grumpy demon finds him, the two begin an unexpected journey. Between magical cities, dangers, and discoveries, a friendship is born capable of changing everything. But after all, who is little Mori, and why is everyone looking for him? Our story begins in a dark and abandoned building. A squad of soldiers advances with caution. The leader of the squad activates the scanner, which maps the area with a red light. In that moment, one of the soldiers shouts that the target is here, and the team advances quickly. The light of their flashlight reveals a cornered child, who looks wild and frightened. But suddenly the child bursts away at high speed, trying to escape the squad. The leader then orders them to throw the device, trying to capture the fleeing target. The scene shifts abruptly to a room, where a boy wakes up with a jump, startled. He sits on the bed, and the story explains that the strong sunlight woke him. The place seems to be an orphanage, a special protection zone for children. But as he steps off the bed, his feet full of scars reveal a difficult past. The story explains that this place was strange to the boy, who walked all clumsy. After all, he now had flat flooring, clean clothes, and even prepared food on the table. The boy spent most of his time alone on a hill, until other children appear. They invite him to play together, but the boy becomes completely terrified at the idea. Suddenly, he throws himself on the ground like an animal, with the hair on his body standing on end. With this bizarre reaction, the other children run away screaming, completely scared of him. The boy stays on the ground and becomes confused when a butterfly lands on his head. In that moment, he throws himself backward and lies on the grass, seeming a little more relaxed. From a window, a woman in a wheelchair observed the whole scene from afar. She then asks if he does not speak, but the caretaker says he just never learned. The woman continues, explaining that the rescue team believes he grew up with animals. The younger caretaker compares him to Mowgli, but the other woman becomes confused by the name. The woman in the wheelchair laughs, saying that young people do not know the story. She then explains that she is from a time far earlier than when that caretaker arrived. At that moment, the orphanage church bell begins to ring, calling everyone. The children all run excitedly toward the caretaker, who calls them to gather. The boy watches curiously as one of the boys receives a letter sealed with wax. He becomes thoughtful, until a voice explains that what the boy is holding is a letter. A red-headed little girl adds, saying it is from a sponsor and that sometimes gifts come. She then looks directly at the boy and asks if he does not have a sponsor. The girl pulls him by the hand, explaining that a sponsor is an adult who looks after him. But the boy disagrees, saying that adults are bad, so she proposes a middle ground. She says that Matthew bragged so much about the gift he got that she felt like hitting him. The girl also complains about the tacky dress that Lily got from her sponsor, and she even comments that Joe talked to her sponsor, finding the whole situation disgusting. Then the boy asks about her, but the girl says she does not need one, because her mother will come get her. She remembers the promise that her mother would come after she slept for 100 nights. The boy becomes confused, but she explains that 100 nights pass in the blink of an eye. She says she hopes her mother comes soon. He looks to the side, with a thoughtful and slightly hopeful expression. That night, the boy observes the starry sky from the window of his room in the orphanage. The story then says that the child blinked his eyes, as if seeing something special. The scene shifts to the classroom, where the teacher says that they came from space. She holds two dolls, explaining that that was how everyone became friends. But a boy with glasses interrupts the class, stating with certainty that this is a lie. A girl asks why the teacher would lie, and he says it is because they think they are just children. The boy then opens an old and thick book to prove that he was telling the truth. Surprised, the others ask where he got the book, and he reveals he took it from the principal's office. He begins reading, explaining that a long time ago aliens came to Earth. The story shows giant and colorful aliens appearing above the city buildings. The news spread, showing the chaos and panic of people with their arrival. Humanity fought with an ultra-powerful weapon called HAEK, but something went wrong. The aliens simply opened a portal and ate the weapon, forcing humans to surrender. Back in the present, the bell rings and the caretaker starts calling the children by name. She then calls for Mori, and our protagonist becomes confused, not understanding anything. The caretaker approaches Mori with a smile, and says that there is a letter for him. The boy takes the envelope, which has a red wax seal right in the middle. The woman says that now he has a sponsor, and asks if he is not happy. He then finds the red-headed little girl standing in the hallway, looking very upset. As he gets closer, he sees that her face is full of tears, because she had been crying. Suddenly, a strange noise draws their attention, coming from a covered table. The girl tells him to go away, while she was still crying. He then begins to walk in circles around the table, very afraid of what might come out of there. The girl remains huddled in the corner, confused by her friend's strange reaction. On the floor, he finds a bitten cookie along with some twigs and flowers. Mori crawls toward the objects, investigating what he thought was a monster's hiding place. The girl then explains that all of that are things she values and kept there. She picks up the cookie from the floor, grumbling with a look of disgust on her face. The girl reveals that the 100 nights have already passed, and that her mother lied to her. The girl cries, saying that now she is completely alone in the world. Seeing her sadness, Mori sits beside the girl in an awkward gesture. Little by little, she calms down, and even manages to give him a small smile. The boy offers the cookie, and she asks if she can really eat that. He starts drooling with desire as she brings the food close to his mouth. The sunlight illuminates their hiding place, making the atmosphere a little happier. She notices that he cannot read, and takes the letter from his hand to help. But upon opening it, she sees that the letter has only a single word written, "Hello." Outraged, she shakes the envelope and asks if that is all. and something falls. What falls to the floor is a beautiful bright blue flower that looks like crystal. Mori becomes completely hypnotized by the beauty of that mysterious flower. Later, he takes the flower to bed and places it beside the pillow. At that moment, he has a strange dream, seeing himself as a baby surrounded by blue flowers. Back in the room, a blue light shines while Mori sleeps peacefully. Time passes in the orphanage, and the church bell rings, marking a new day. With that, Mori continues receiving letters and gifts, and everyone thinks he is very lucky. He has already accumulated so many gifts that the other children are impressed with the quantity. While his friend complains about the letters, the others are delighted with the crayons and the talking doll. The children then wonder what kind of person the sponsor is and why they are so kind. One of the boys says that adults are nice when they feel guilty, leaving Mori confused. Understanding nothing, Mori tries to eat the crayon, and his friend screams for him to stop now. She calls him dumb and shows the right way, explaining that it is used for drawing. Seeing the color on the paper, Mori becomes shocked as if he had discovered a new world. The scene changes, and the principal invites the children to help wash the clothes on a sunny day. The text explains that it was the principal who called them for the fun task in the backyard. With great enthusiasm, the children roll up their pants and step into the buckets with the clothes. One of the boys is surprised to see that his toes have become all wrinkled, but Mori's friend finds no fun in it and calls the others idiots for thinking that is amazing. Mori, however, seems to enjoy himself greatly, stepping in the water and making soap bubbles. Mori has a lot of fun in the water, and the girl comments that it is amazing. She then warns him not to step too hard, but a voice calls her name, Dina. Confused, she looks into the distance and runs off upon seeing someone, shouting the name Radina. Her face fills with joy and emotion, with a smile from ear to ear. In the rush to leave, the girl ends up knocking over the water bucket by accident. She runs into her mother's arms and screams with happiness, giving her a very tight hug. Her mother holds her tightly, while the other children observe the scene from afar. Mori stands still, with a confused and slightly sad expression on his face. He watches the two walking away, leaving together across the green field. The scene changes, and the girl, now at night, says goodbye, asking him to take care of himself. With her bags ready, she advises him not to eat fast, so he does not get sick. She then offers her bag and her shoes, saying she will give everything to him. The boy looks at the shoes, and she tells him to wear them so he will not walk barefoot anymore. Suddenly, the girl hugs him with all her strength, shouting his name. Very close, she whispers in his ear that he must be happy. That night, Mori sleeps with a smile, remembering his friend's farewell hug. He recalls the scene of her leaving happily with her mother over the hill. At that moment, all the orphanage children said goodbye, waving to the girl who was leaving. The story shows that the boy returned to sit alone on his usual hill. But even with the absence of his friend, the story explains that he did not feel lonely. That is because the letters and gifts from his sponsor were always by his side. The cloak was warm, and the crayons and the talking doll were very fun, and the affectionate letters always came with a nice scent of fragrant wildflowers. Besides that, the bright blue flower always came along with the simple messages he received. With all that, Mori looked at the horizon, thoughtful about who sent so many gifts. He remembers the friend's questions, whether the sponsor felt guilty about something, and he also recalls his friend's joy upon finally finding her mother. A light then shines in his eye, as if he had had a great idea. The story says that the child wondered if this mysterious person could be someone special. It was then that he asked himself if the sponsor could be his own mother. Decided, Mori packs his things in the bag his friend gave him, ready for an adventure. He looks one last time at the orphanage, and says goodbye from afar, waving to the sky. Then he takes a step and begins walking, until he finds an abandoned railroad track. Wearing the shoes he received, he sets off on an unknown path under the starry sky. The story explains that he is going on a long journey to finally meet his mother. The scene changes, and he seems to have found a barn to spend the night with some animals. When he wakes up, a calf licks his face, and the story says that the child awoke. The train he boarded without thinking was already taking him on a long trip to see his mother. The locomotive releases smoke as it travels through a rocky and endless desert. When the train finally stops, Mori steps down and his feet sink into the hot sand. He stands still, waving at the train as the machine goes away and leaves him behind. Now alone, the boy looks around, lost in the middle of that immense desert. The camera pulls back, showing how small he is in that desolate landscape. With firm steps, he begins to walk through the sand, moving forward. Mori is walking alone on a solitary journey through the desert. Suddenly, Mori hears a sound of falling rocks and hides to see what it is. He looks ahead with a confused expression, not understanding what is happening. In the distance, he spots a group of people approaching in the middle of the desert. At that moment, a gang of bikers appears at high speed, looking like bounty hunters. Mori becomes completely terrified by the frightening appearance of those men. Without thinking twice, he turns around and starts running as fast as he can. The gang then starts chasing him through the sand, surrounding the boy from all sides. The scene cuts to a mysterious man with white hair and a serious expression. He watches the entire chase from atop a rock, mounted on his motorcycle. The bandits surround Mori, and one of them asks what that thing is, thinking the boy is strange. Another questions how that can be human, since he is too small and weird. One of the henchmen then asks if they can still sell him, but the other does not answer. Mori is on the ground, exhausted and sweating in fear for having been captured by them. One of the bandits then suggests that they could simply eat a little piece of him. He says that nobody would notice, and that they could pull off just a leg, since he is small. Suddenly, a giant monster lands on the sand, raising a huge cloud of dust with the impact. He glares at the bandits and asks who said they could touch the boy freely. One of the henchmen becomes terrified and stammers an apology to his boss. The boss grumbles that something that size is not even good for a snack, but then he notices something. Mori stays on the ground, just watching all the confusion without understanding what is going on. At that moment, a shot hits one of the bandits directly, with a burst of green energy. The others are shocked, wondering what kind of bullet that was that glowed. Suddenly, a super technological motorcycle appears on the horizon, coming at high speed. The monster shouts that it is a rider, and tells his men not to panic, because it is just one. Even with the warning, the henchmen start shooting desperately at the motorcyclist, but the rider dodges all the bullets with impressive skill, without being hit. He maneuvers his motorcycle and fires back, hitting the enemies with red lasers. Seeing his men fall, the boss becomes furious and curses the motorcyclist with great hatred. He then charges toward the rider, ready to attack at full force. With a roar of fury, the monster stretches his claw, preparing the final strike, but the rider accelerates his motorcycle, dodging the attack with a very risky maneuver. The monster's strike hits the ground and causes a gigantic explosion of sand and dust. With a confident smile, the boss watches the smoke, thinking he won the fight, but his hand begins to glitch, as if a computer program were malfunctioning. Suddenly, he looks up with wide eyes, completely in shock. The rider leaps with his motorcycle above the smoke, in an incredible aerial maneuver. He then activates an energy weapon, which begins to shine with a very strong blue light. A beam of energy is fired from the sky, creating rings of light and hitting the ground. Mori curls up, protecting himself from the wind and dust the explosion caused. The rider lands his motorcycle with a stylish skid, leaving a trail of energy on the ground. The dust clears, revealing a huge crater where the bounty hunters once were. Sitting on his motorcycle, the rider complains that they did that again in his territory. Mori stands right in front of the motorcycle's tire, looking up scared and confused. The mysterious savior turns, and his yellow eyes shine toward the boy. The rider becomes intrigued, wondering what the hell that tiny child is doing there. Mori glares at the rider angrily, but trembles with fear because of the danger. The motorcyclist notices his fear, and his floating robot assistant appears beside him. The artificial intelligence scans Mori, showing that he is scared and nervous. The rider crouches, and the little robot explains that he is a human baby, leaving the biker thoughtful. Suddenly, the rider's mask opens, revealing a demonic and smiling face. He greets the little boy saying hello with an energetic and cheerful voice. Mori is left speechless, with a drop of sweat sliding down his frightened face. The rider tells him not to worry, and introduces his robot friend, named Aya. With a bright smile, he offers to take the lost boy back home. Mori's eyes shine, full of hope and admiration for his savior. The rider then asks the little boy to follow him, and begins walking through the desert. Mori follows him, and the demon gives a gentle smile, happy to have helped. But alone, the rider reveals an evil grin, wondering what to do now. He thinks that although eating humans is not illegal, it is a social taboo to do so. The demon then calculates the price, and says that even if he is small, he still brings good money. He thinks about selling him alive to the caverns, because some lunatic might want him as a toy. In this, he notices the boy's clothes, and thinks that, at an auction, they would fetch good money. But Mori pokes him, and the rider asks the little one to wait a bit, sounding a bit impatient. He then realizes there is something on the boy's clothes, a strange and glowing symbol. Upon recognizing the symbol, the demon becomes terrified, sweating cold in pure fear. He changes his attitude instantly, and says with a laugh that wow, it's already getting late. The rider apologizes, saying that he is a very, very busy guy indeed. Already on the bike, he asks if Mori knows how to return on his own and celebrates the positive answer. With that, the demon speeds off and disappears on the horizon, leaving the boy behind. He looks back while accelerating, fleeing that place as fast as he can. The rider keeps sweating, thinking that that was the symbol, and that he almost ruined his life. His robot then teases him, saying that this is chickening out, but the rider tells him to shut up. He clears his throat, saying that the scare dried out his throat, and the robot offers a drink. The demon grabs the bottle and thanks him, still recovering from the huge fright he had. But upon drinking, he chokes, as if there was something very wrong with the drink. Somehow, Mori clings to the rider at high speed, leaving the demon in a panic. He screams, asking when and how the boy got on the bike, completely desperate. The rider keeps riding and yelling for him to get off, but the boy won't let go. In his desperation, he loses control of the bike and the two tumble badly in the sand. The scene darkens, and sometime later, the demon finally opens his eyes, a bit dizzy. He wakes with a headache and grumbles, seeing several papers scattered on the ground. Confused, he sees that he is covered with the boy's cloak and other things from his bag. The rider keeps sitting, trying to understand what happened after the motorcycle accident. In this, he picks up one of the sheets and wonders what that is, seeming like a letter. Mori then appears from behind the paper, with a worried and slightly scared expression. The rider jumps in fright and screams because he thought the boy was sleeping, but then the robot explains that it covered him with the items and made a fire to warm him. The robot says that he seems to need hydration, and the rider agrees to drink water. Mori then gets up and walks back to the fire, leaving the demon watching. He grabs the canteen to fetch the water, and the rider just watches him, feeling awkward. But Mori trips on a rock and ends up throwing all the water into the rider's face. The demon is drenched and speechless, his eyes wide in total shock. Mori becomes terrified, his hair all spiky, thinking he made a huge mistake. In this, he runs and starts gathering his things, and the rider realizes it was him all along. The demon's eyes widen and he stares at the boy with a very serious expression. Mori hugs his things, trembling in fear of the rider's possible reaction. The demon then recognizes the seal of the letter and is certain it is the symbol he feared. The story explains that it is the symbol of one of the 7 fingers, the beginning and the end of the universe. Threatening a bearer of that symbol is like signing one's own death sentence. A bloody image shows the eye of a creature with the symbol carved into its pupil. The rider swallows hard, wiping the sweat from his neck because he knows he got himself into trouble. But even with all the danger, the story explains that the rider was still thoughtful. He looks at the boy, who seems like a kind of silly and helpless human in the middle of nowhere, and he also notices the symbol engraved on most of the items the boy carries. The rider then remembers the papers, which are so expensive they're worth a month's food. He also notices that the ink on the letter seems to have been written with great care. With an evil smile, he realizes he can earn a great reward if he delivers the boy, but then the robot warns that the battery is running low, and the rider tells him to go rest. The robot disintegrates and returns to the weapon, and the rider continues his journey with the boy. He then turns to the boy and asks if he understood the plan. With a snap of his fingers, the demon says that saviors like him are rare, and that the boy was very lucky. He continues, saying that he is the only one who knows the area well, and can guide him safely. To prove his point, he points to some lizards crying over a grave nearby. The rider starts to explain that when they reach the destination, he will. But the boy gets distracted by something on the ground and moves away, leaving the demon talking to himself. Annoyed, the rider scolds him for not paying attention while he is speaking. Mori then shows what he found, a giant blue beetle that he is about to eat. The demon stays silent, completely shocked and speechless at the scene. In a panic attack, he grabs the boy and yells for him to spit the bug out right now. The rider lies exhausted on the ground, crawling in despair because of the boy's actions. The rider yells at Mori, saying that eating something like that could kill him instantly. He then holds the beetle and shows it, explaining that the blue legs indicate poison. The demon continues the lesson, speaking of mushrooms and scorpions that are also dangerous. Sitting in the sand, he asks if the boy understood, and Mori nods yes. The rider sighs in relief, thinking that now he wouldn't have any more problems with the boy. But right after, he sees Mori trying to fiddle with a giant and dormant security robot, and then the boy tries to touch a huge carnivorous plant that emerges from the sand. To make things worse, Mori almost drowns in quicksand, covering himself in mud. The demon screams desperately for him not to get upset because the boy is all shiny and clean. Exhausted, the rider throws himself on the ground, wondering what the hell he is doing with his life. Later, he wakes up and sees Mori drawing near the fire, very focused. The rider sits and asks what the boy is drawing with such attention there. Mori shows the drawings, babbling things the demon cannot understand. He then notices a strange name written on a box, and wonders if Mori is a name. The rider grabs one of the drawings and asks what that black thing Mori drew is. Mori points to the drawing, and the demon asks if that is supposed to be him. The rider is shocked and incredulous to learn that the drawing is a portrait of him. With a drop of sweat on his face, he holds the paper and analyzes the boy's drawing. The story explains that the rider stared at the drawing for a long time. After all, that was the first time someone had taken the trouble to draw him. The robot reappears and says that the rider seems to be in a good mood, leaving the demon embarrassed. The artificial intelligence then describes itself and gives 50 points to Mori's observation skill. The rider then turns to the boy with a serious and slightly emotional expression. He says that the boy should draw him in a more impressive way and shows how to do it. We shift scenes to the rider in another place. Standing on a rock, he throws a device into the air and continues his demonstration. He then says that as soon as they cross that hill, the journey will be near its end. But Mori has already run ahead, and the rider yells for him to listen to what he is saying. Irritated, the demon threatens to leave him behind if he doesn't hurry and walk together. But something catches the rider's attention, and he stops talking, with a confused expression. Mori finds a strange creature, and the rider wonders if it is a wild animal. Suddenly, a bigger beast appears and attacks the smaller creature, throwing Mori away. The monster's claws catch fire, and it attacks with a flaming strike. The attack creates a gigantic wall of fire, which spreads across the entire area. The rider is shocked, his mouth open in awe at the power of that beast. The intense flame keeps burning, turning the desert into a true inferno. With his weapon in hand, he yells at the boy, asking what the hell he is doing. He then runs toward the fire, while the monster flees with its prey. The rider stretches out his hand, trying to reach the boy before the flames get him. The scene fills with an intense red, showing the rider's silhouette in the middle of the fire. The story explains that the rider panicked at the flickering flames. After all, the child would be charred without leaving a trace if he stayed there. But at that exact moment, the boy's cloak begins to flutter in a strange way, and that made the flames around him disappear, one by one, miraculously. The story explains that it was like a magic cloak protecting him from danger. After the fire dies out, Mori sits on the ground, completely unharmed and safe. The rider is left open-mouthed upon seeing that the bigger creature is caring for the baby. He runs to the boy and asks, stuttering if he is okay after everything. The demon kneels, exhausted and relieved, saying he almost had a heart attack. But suddenly, he turns with a furious look toward the monsters. The rider draws his weapon and curses the creatures, calling them little turds. The bigger beast turns around ready to fight, and the baby hides behind it. But Mori scolds the rider, saying he is acting like the victim after setting everything on fire. He yells that the little monster is also a child, and that it almost became barbecue because of him. The rider points the weapon at both, asking if they are thinking about running away now. In this, the robot reappears and warns that something is approaching from under the ground. The sand begins to tremble, and a gigantic creature, looking like a dragon, emerges from the earth. The colossal monster rises, its blue eyes shining in the desert darkness. The rider is shocked and curses, because he realizes that that is the adult of the species. He then stands in front of Mori, determined to send him back before fighting. The robot warns that the monster is coming, and the rider prepares for impact. The giant creature then crouches in front of them, seeming calm and gentle. The monster lowers its head, bowing before the rider and the other creatures. The demon becomes embarrassed and tries to threaten the beast, but the robot asks why he is yelling. Mori then approaches one of the creatures, which seems a bit confused by the situation. The little creature gives him a huge yellow crystal, which shines with a strong light. The boy opens his bag and stores the gift, while the others watch the scene. He then pets the creature with a feather, and it becomes all happy and bouncy. The rider is shocked, not understanding why they are circling around the boy. The creatures then climb onto the bigger monster, which begins to sink back into the sand. The baby nestles against the large beast, seeming happy and safe beside its family. The rider watches the scene, and Mori turns to him, holding his cloak tightly. The demon explains that he almost died today, and that he only survived because of the cloak. He says that the cloak is magic, making fire disappear and regulating temperature. The rider then advises Mori to be grateful to whoever gave him the cloak, and the boy agrees. The rider grumbles, unable to believe he is surrounded by cute and glowing creatures. Later he lies down to rest near the fire, while Mori stays awake. The boy stares at the demon sleeping, with a thoughtful and slightly worried expression. The rider then calls his robot, asking it to show the data about humans. The artificial intelligence projects a holographic screen, loading all the information. The robot shows the data, which include the life cycle and DNA structure of humans. The rider looks at the data and agrees, seeming to understand a bit more about the species. He concludes that if humans reproduce, then this child must also have a mother. The story explains that humans appeared while the masters of the earth were away, and that they wanted to believe everything belonged to them, even other human beings. The rider thinks that, seeing how things reach this point, the powerful do not care. He turns to his side with an irritated expression, thinking about the cruelty of humans. Meanwhile, Mori is already sleeping deeply. Covered by his warm and magical cloak, the demon moves closer and watches the boy sleep. With a softer look, he then reaches out and holds Mori's little hand in an unexpected gesture of affection. The boy's little hand squeezes the demon's finger, creating a bond between the two. The scene shows the two sleeping together near the fire, as if they were father and son. The rider wakes up and watches Mori sleep, with a thoughtful and determined look. While he sleeps, the boy turns and nestles into the demon's arm, surprising him. He then lies down again, with a smile on his face, seeming to have made a decision. The scene changes, and a voice says it will find him. The rider and his robot watch Mori sleep, and the voice confirms that it will, without any doubt. The scene changes again, and Mori wakes up lying in a lush and peaceful green field. He sits on the grass, looking around, confused by the sudden change of scenery. The boy looks at the sky, and then at the field, trying to understand where he ended up. Suddenly he widens his eyes upon seeing something approaching from afar. The camera focuses on Mori, who seems sleepy and with his face crumpled from so much sleep. The rider holds him and asks if he woke up, while riding the motorcycle through the desert. He points forward and tells the boy to take a look at what is coming. The scene reveals a giant city, surrounded by imposing rocky canyons. Upon arriving, Mori is impressed by the food and the bustle of the city. The place is built in the middle of a canyon, with bridges connecting the cliffs. Suddenly a group of demons surrounds the boy, saying he is the cutest thing. They introduce themselves and ask how the little one is doing, all enchanted with him. Mori gets embarrassed, while the demons comment on how small and adorable he is. The rider then picks him up and yells for them to get out, saying it will cost them dearly. He grumbles that Mori stands out more than he expected, and the robot agrees. They enter a kind of bar, and the rider walks through the place with the boy in his arms. A woman named Valentine approaches and asks what is going on with the rider. She asks when he decided to raise a human, and the rider warns that he is not food. The demon then shows the letter and asks if she has ever seen that symbol anywhere. She explains that the symbol is used as payment, and that they are probably in the city. The rider is shocked and asks where they are, and Valentine says it is right there. The woman then strokes Mori's hair and comments that the man she saw also had black hair. Valentine asks why they would come here, and the rider asks for accommodation for 50. The two start arguing about the price, and the rider yells that 35 is enough. Irritated, Valentine stands up and says he will not fool her again like last time. She grabs his face and makes a counteroffer, saying it is take it or leave it. Defeated, the rider throws the money on the table and the other demons laugh. The robot suggests selling a battery, but the rider says it would be a waste. He then gets irritated at the idea of selling the boy's things and letting him go hungry. Mori hands him the crystal, and the rider asks Valentine how much it is worth. She recognizes the object and reveals that it is a Tomas stone, leaving the rider surprised. With a single touch, the woman breaks the crystal into 3 pieces easily. The rider is terrified by what she did, with his hair standing on end from fright, but she asks him to calm down and tells him to look closely, because the crystal fixes itself. Valentine explains that it fixes itself, feeds on light, and glows in the dark. The rider asks if it is expensive, but she says it became so popular that it has no value anymore. He grumbles and gives the stone back to Mori, saying that was what he thought too. Rider drops the stone on the floor, and it rolls and stops near another person. The boy then walks toward whoever picked up the crystal without any fear. He and the mysterious creature touch the stone at the same time, creating a moment of connection. The boy sits down, and the masked demon watches the little one with curiosity. The creature reveals itself with a frightening appearance, but it seems gentle near the boy. With wide eyes, the masked demon says that the boy is adorable. He then starts playing with Mori, lifting the boy by the ribbon of his hood. Suddenly the creature grabs the boy tightly. He opens a magic portal and pulls Mori inside, with several hands grabbing him. The boy rubs his eyes and sees the masked demon watching him from the darkness. Mori is terrified, with a drop of sweat running down his frightened face. The creature then vanishes into the shadows, taking the boy away from the bar. Left behind, Mori begins to cry and scream in fear in the middle of the darkness. He keeps crying, with tears running down his face, feeling alone and lost. The rider hears the crying and turns around, with a shocked and worried expression on his face. The rider looks around and wonders where Mori went, somewhat concerned. He yells the boy's name, wondering where that kid went now. One of the demons grumbles, while the masked creature disappears behind a curtain. The masked demon looks back, as if hiding something important. The rider jumps to his feet, with an expression of anger and despair on his face. He runs to the curtain and yells for the creature to wait, trying to stop it from fleeing. The robot begins scanning the area, and the rider yells for him to stop for a moment. He reaches out his hand, yelling once more for the creature to stop, but it is too late. The masked demon jumps off the bridge, disappearing into the dark abyss of the canyon. The rider stands at the edge, shocked and confused by the creature's sudden escape. The masked demon looks up, with a defiant and mysterious gaze. The robot says it detected a life form in the creature's pocket, and the rider becomes furious. He then orders the robot to fly up to block their path, and the little one floats. The rider begins running across the bridge, chasing the kidnapper with all his speed. The robot flies, searching for a way to intercept the masked demon. The robot begins scanning the city, with its sensor glowing green. The sweep maps the entire canyon structure, showing the bridges and passages. The holographic screen displays various data, analyzing obstacles and possible paths. The robot reports that it found 14 possible routes for the chase. It calculates the target's speed and direction, and concludes that they are on Route 2. The artificial intelligence initiates navigation, and the rider shoots after the kidnapper. The robot warns that there are stairs ahead, and the rider goes down the steps quickly. Meanwhile, the masked demon hides behind some barrels, trying to throw him off. The rider continues the chase, running across the dark bridge with great determination. The robot guides him, telling him to take the left bridge, and the kidnapper makes a detour. Nearby, a street artist shows his masterpiece, a sand self-portrait. But the rider runs by and destroys the sculpture, not even realizing what he did. The artist begins to cry, seeing his half-year artwork destroyed in seconds. The robot then lands on the ground, indicating that the target changed route again. The robot warns that it switched to Route 11, and the rider jumps to another path. The masked demon runs, looking back to see if the rider is still on his tail. Mori, inside the bag, struggles and trembles with fear, trying to escape from there. The robot warns that they are approaching the destination, and the rider speeds up. He then reaches a place that looks like a portal, with a golden light in the back. The rider jumps to another rock, using the canyon paths to take a shortcut. But he reaches a dead end, and wonders if the robot is being serious. The artificial intelligence then shows the target on the map and yells that it's now. The rider throws himself off the cliff, using a hook to swing to the other side. He lands hard on the ground, rolling a few times before managing to get up. The kidnapper turns and is shocked to see that the rider managed to reach him. The creature turns and tries to flee again, but the rider is getting closer. The demon then summons his bike from the sky, which falls on top of the kidnapper. The bike lands on the ground, and the rider approaches the fallen and cornered enemy. The masked demon asks who he is and why he is chasing him like that, but the rider ignores him and yells for Mori, asking if the boy can hear him. The masked demon mutters something, and the muffled sound comes from inside the pocket. The robot scans the voice, trying to identify whose sound it heard. With 98% certainty, it confirms that it is Mori, and the rider yells in anger. He demands that the creature return his human, but it pretends not to understand. The kidnapper says he doesn't know what he's talking about, with a calm and cold voice. He continues, saying that this is something he has raised since forever, and provokes the rider. The robot warns that Mori's fear level is rising, making the rider even more furious. He points the gun, and orders the creature to stop talking nonsense and take the boy out of there. But the masked demon refuses, with a simple and direct no. He says the boy is very cute, and that because of that he will raise him. The creature repeats that he will raise the boy because he is too cute to let go. The kidnapper recognizes the rider and provokes him, calling him crazy. He continues, saying that the rider is an infamous outlaw with an illegal offspring. The rider then asks how someone as dangerous as him can raise a human, but the masked demon replies that he can raise him with much more love than he can. The masked demon says the rider also wants the boy because he likes him. He challenges the rider, proposing that they ask Mori himself who he prefers to stay with. The creature goes silent for a moment, staring at the demon with its empty eyes, but he dodges the subject, saying that the boy's opinion is not important in that situation. The rider then prepares to fight, and the robot transforms into a powerful weapon. The kidnapper warns that shooting in the city will put him on the wanted list, but the rider doesn't care. And Mori's crying echoes in the darkness, leaving him desperate. The story shows that the child was scared and saw no way out of that dark place. Suddenly a voice speaks to him, and it was the doll his mother gave him. The masked demon then makes a proposal, saying he will be generous and give in. He proposes to keep the head, and the rider can keep the boy's body. The robot's screen shows that the remaining energy is 63%, enough for one shot. The rider thinks he has the power to blow the enemy's head off with a single shot, but he hesitates, because the compression of the muscular pocket could crush the boy. He gets irritated, wishing he could get Mori out of there before shooting the kidnapper. The kidnapper gets annoyed by the rider's silence and dares to ignore him like that. Suddenly he feels something strange moving inside his cloak and gets startled. The masked demon groans in pain, not understanding what is happening in there. He screams desperately, and Mori comes out of the pocket, leaving a puddle of liquid behind. The rider smiles, and Mori runs toward him, fleeing from the kidnapper's hands. The creature screams that it is disgusting, trembling with anger and disgust at the situation. He becomes furious, yelling about how the boy dared do that inside his pocket. The scene focuses on Mori, who keeps running away, unaware of the kidnapper's fury. In the blink of an eye, the rider fires an energy shot that rips the enemy's arm off. The masked demon screams in pain, lamenting having lost his arm and his jewels. The rider approaches and stares at him, telling him to listen well to what he is going to say. With Mori in his arms, he threatens the enemy, telling him not to touch the boy again. He continues the threat, saying he will make him crawl like a snake if he disobeys. The rider grumbles, realizing the shot was too loud and drew attention. He then calls his robot, and the bike reassembles so they can escape from there. The rider picks Mori up, checking if the boy's clothes are clean. With the problem solved, they get on the bike and speed across the desert. The demon breathes in relief, and Mori looks at him with a confused expression. Suddenly, the rider starts laughing loudly, happy with what happened. He mocks the kidnapper, laughing at how the enemy got all disgusting and irritated. The robot praises the tactic, saying it was a truly ingenious method of escaping. The rider then hugs Mori and congratulates him, saying he did really well. He says he is very proud of the boy, and Mori's eyes shine with joy. The boy climbs onto the rider's shoulders, feeling majestic and victorious. The robot asks which direction they should go, and the rider says it's the fastest route. With Mori on his shoulders, he announces that they are going to the whale cradle. But the boy starts climbing onto his head, and the rider yells for him to get down. They arrive at a place full of fog and get off the bike to continue on foot. Mori climbs a hill and looks around, curious about the new environment. Suddenly, the boy's mouth opens wide, amazed at what he sees in front of him. The scene reveals a mountainous landscape, with the two exploring the new territory. They travel through forests, ruins, and deserts, living many adventures together. At night, they camp and cook over the fire, sharing a moment of peace. Elsewhere, they find a sinister forest, with branches that look like tentacles. In a dark cave, the rider faints, and Mori gets scared by a strong light. The robot saves the data, recording that the strange creature fears strong lights. They then arrive in a cave with the phrase "No War" written on the wall. The rider picks up an improvised shield, and the two prepare for what comes next. They navigate through an underground river, with Mori on a raft, and the rider swimming beside him. Upon arriving in a dark cave, they see several red eyes watching from the darkness. Suddenly, a swarm of flying creatures attacks, and the rider tries to protect himself. Mori disassembles the robot, taking a green piece that glows with an intense light. He then rubs the piece on the rider's face, as if it were war paint. The journey continues, and their bike flies over a green field under the moonlight. Mori watches the moon with a thoughtful look, remembering everything he has lived. The scene reveals a starry sky, with a school of giant flying whales. One of the whales flies over their bike, creating a magical scene. Mori reaches out his hand, amazed by the beauty of those flying creatures. The rider smiles, happy to see the boy's joy at that spectacle. He activates the autopilot and lifts Mori into the air so he can see better. The boy stretches out his hand, trying to reach the stars and the whales in the sky. One of the whales approaches, and Mori's mouth opens wide at its grandeur. The boy's little hand almost touches the whale's skin. In a moment of pure magic, Mori's eyes shine, reflecting the starry sky and the lights of the aurora borealis. The school of whales continues its journey, disappearing on the starry horizon. Mori closes his eyes and remembers a loving voice. The memory shows a woman with dark hair, hugging the boy with love. The mother's voice echoes, and Mori sleeps with a smile on his face, feeling loved. He wakes up startled in the rider's arms, confused by the dream he just had. The demon notices he woke up and holds him tighter, continuing the journey. The rider blames the robot for how it drives, but the boy sleeps peacefully. The robot defends itself, saying it was being careful and that the autopilot is great. The artificial intelligence teases, and the rider gets irritated, remembering he was the one who created it. They arrive at a place covered in snow, and the rider gets off the bike to analyze it. He looks at the frozen landscape and comments that that place hasn't changed at all. The robot suggests they walk in silence, because the night creatures might wake up. The rider tries to show something to Mori, but the robot interrupts him, saying no. The artificial intelligence then pauses, as if about to say something important. The robot asks if the boy isn't too equipped, since he has a super protective cloak. The rider jokes, saying it would be fun to roll him up like a ball, but the robot calls it abuse. He insists on the joke, but Mori gets confused, not understanding what is happening. The scene changes, and the robot creates a hologram of a snow-covered mountain. Suddenly, the robot warns that something is approaching them at high speed. The rider is shocked by the speed, which the robot reports as 491 kilometers per hour. The demon looks back, tail swaying, tense with the approaching threat. A shadowy image of the rider appears, with his tail swaying in a threatening way. He says he has a bad feeling, and decides to change the plan and go by motorcycle. The demon gets on the motorcycle and speeds through the snow, fleeing the approaching threat. The robot reports that the distance is decreasing, and that 2 minutes remain until arrival. With 53 seconds left, Mori looks back with an expression of fear and concern. The robot warns that it can already see the target, and the rider accelerates even more. He then turns and prepares the weapon, ready to attack whatever is coming. The rider fires a green energy beam, trying to hit the enemy pursuing him, but the shot explodes in the air, as if it had hit an invisible and powerful barrier. The demon is shocked, and a sphere of dark energy forms in front of them. The snow begins to be sucked into the sphere, which turns into a black hole. A mysterious figure emerges from the snow, wearing a white overcoat and a black hat. Mori is frightened, with a drop of sweat sliding down his innocent face. The figure stares at the rider, with an imposing and threatening presence in the blizzard. The rider is shocked, for he has never heard of a hunter who could use black holes. The rider gets irritated, not believing they hired someone so strong because of a few little shots. The mysterious hunter observes from afar, while the rider flees with Mori on the motorcycle. The demon hugs the boy tightly, determined to protect him from danger. A creature with a blue helmet turns, watching the scene in silence and mystery. The rider asks the robot what the chance of winning is, and it answers that it's only 16%. He is shocked by the low percentage, but the robot says there is still a margin of error. The demon knows the chances are accurate, and recognizes that the enemy is very strong. He decides he needs to avoid a frontal fight, so he doesn't risk the boy's life. In this case, he needs to take a drastic action, and risk everything at once. With the weapon in hand, he yells that it's now or never, ready for all or nothing. The rider fires a hook at the mountain, and uses the momentum to jump over the abyss. The motorcycle flies through the air in a dangerous maneuver to try to lose the hunter. The enemy simply watches from afar, standing in the snow, as if waiting for something. The rider then yells at the robot, telling it to release the power limiter. The motorcycle's panel displays a warning, and the robot reports that it is accessing acceleration mode. A warning appears on the panel, showing that the motorcycle is entering super speed mode. The robot warns to be careful with fractures, and the rider's weapon glows with energy. A blue beam of light descends from the sky, creating energy rings and opening a crater. The explosion creates several holes in the mountain, releasing a powerful blue energy. The rider celebrates, saying the enemy is reacting and that they can manage something. Mori is frightened, and an avalanche of rocks and snow begins to fall toward them. The giant avalanche almost hits them, and they continue fleeing at high speed. The demon speeds up the motorcycle, with the boy in his arms, trying to escape the pursuit. The motorcycle flies through the snow, with the robot in front, guiding the way at high speed. The rider yells for Mori to hold tight, while the boy screams in fear and adrenaline. Suddenly, the rider turns with an expression of surprise and concern on his face. The robot warns that it is seeing the ice bridge just ahead, their objective. The rider fires an energy beam in the hunter's direction, trying to slow him down. The shot opens a path of energy, but the enemy keeps approaching. The hunter then creates a blue energy sphere, preparing for a counterattack. The sphere of energy moves toward the ice bridge, creating a path. The rider realizes that for some reason the hunter has no intention of attacking. He understands that if they can reach the bridge, they might have a chance to escape. The demon looks forward, his eyes shining with hope and determination, but suddenly the hunter appears in front of the motorcycle, blocking their path. The rider is shocked, and the enemy attacks him with impressive speed. The hunter grabs the rider's throat, choking him with absurd strength. The rider tries to break free, but the enemy's hand is too strong and he cannot. The hunter lifts him into the air, leaving his feet dangling without touching the ground. The hunter continues pressing the rider. The figure then approaches Mori, who is curled up and frightened on the ground. The hunter stretches out his hand, ready to grab the defenseless boy on the ground. Mori stares at him with eyes full of tears, scared of what might happen. Suddenly the hunter notices something and turns, with an expression of surprise. The rider jumps from the cliff and attacks the enemy with a powerful flying kick. The hunter manages to defend himself, but the impact of the blow throws him far away. The rider falls to the ground, injured but determined to protect the boy at all costs. He stares at the enemy and asks if he doesn't know that place with a defiant look. The scene shows the broken ice bridge, with the two staring at each other from opposite sides. The hunter advances, ready to continue the fight against the wounded demon. Suddenly a giant flying whale emerges from the snow. The hunter throws the rider toward the whale, using the demon as bait. The robot warns that it is retrieving the motorcycle, while the hunter watches the scene. The creature shakes its head as if disappointed. Mori wakes up and calls for the rider, with the robot floating at his side, worried. The rider opens his eyes, dizzy, and wonders if he fainted during the commotion. The robot explains that it was lack of air, and the rider asks how Mori is. The artificial intelligence praises the strategy, saying that waking the whale was a good idea. The rider stands up and asks where they are now, looking around confused. He looks at the landscape with a serious expression, trying to recognize the place. The scene reveals a floating city, with a giant black sphere in the middle of it. The robot reports that they have arrived in the city, the final destination of their journey. Mori points to the city, amazed by the sight of that floating place. The rider asks if they should go to the entrance, but the robot advises him to disguise himself. He then pulls off a piece of hair from a dead creature to use as a disguise. The demon adjusts the fake hair, preparing to enter the city without being recognized. He calls Mori and says that everything is fine, ready to start the new phase of the mission. But Mori gets confused, not understanding why the rider is wearing that weird hair. The rider gets confused, not understanding why the boy is acting that way. Mori starts running in circles, and the rider asks what came over him all of a sudden. He picks the boy up and yells that it's him, the rider, but Mori remains scared. The robot explains that he does not recognize him because of the hair, leaving the rider irritated. The artificial intelligence then suggests a solution to that unexpected problem. The robot places itself on the boy's head, and the two hide under the cloak. The rider then puts Mori on his shoulders, and the three become a bizarre figure. They walk through a giant hallway, and the robot complains that the two are noisy. Upon reaching the end, they find a reception, and a voice says, "Hello." A creature without a body welcomes them and asks how it can help them. The robot reports that they are there to find Patch, the owner of the symbol. The rider reaches into the boy's pocket to get the letter, and he groans in pain. The robot then hands over the envelope with the seal, proving that they have permission. The receptionist creates a hologram and asks which of the symbols they are looking for. The rider is shocked, for he did not know that the insignia could be used by several members. The robot wonders which one they should go to, not knowing which to choose. He looks at the hologram, trying to identify which of the locations is the correct one. Mori then rummages through the bag, as if searching for something important inside. He takes out the blue crystal flower and offers it to the receptionist, somewhat shyly. The flower glows with a blue light, seeming to hold some special magical power. The receptionist turns, as if she recognized the object the boy showed. She then says that there is only one person they can go to with that item. A portal opens in the middle of the room, revealing a path to an unknown place. The robot wonders what that is, and the rider says it looks like a portal. The two look at each other, and the rider touches the portal with his hand, feeling the energy. The receptionist tells them not to worry, for they will get there either way. The rider then enters the portal, crossing the dark barrier cautiously. They walk through a dark hallway until they find a light at the end of the tunnel. The scene reveals a green field, with a blue sky and white clouds. The robot says wow, and the rider is amazed by the beauty of that place. They arrive at a mansion in the middle of the field, and the rider comments on the unique taste. Mori looks at the house with eyes shining in expectation and curiosity. The robot says that Mori is in a good mood, and the boy starts running through the grass. They reach the mansion's gate, and the rider removes the fake hair, preparing to enter. He warns the robot and Mori to stay close, for it may be dangerous inside. The rider tries to find the doorbell, but does not know where to press to open the gate. Mori approaches the gate and sees an open window on the second floor of the house. A woman with dark hair appears at the window. The boy widens his eyes, as if he recognized the person he had been searching for. He smiles with a spark of hope in his eyes, and runs toward the house. Mori slips through the bars of the gate and runs into the garden, leaving the rider behind. The demon yells for him to come back, and the boy enters the house through the open window. The rider panics and starts shaking the gate, yelling for them to open the door. Mori lands on the wooden floor and finds himself in a long hallway lit by sunlight. He walks down the hallway, and the door at the end opens, revealing what is inside. Mori looks ahead, his eyes shining with expectation as he enters the room. Suddenly, a creature appears and sees him. It asks who he is. The strange creature also seems confused by the visit. The boy gets a drop of sweat, while the creature asks how he got in there. They get startled by each other, and Mori hides, for the creature says it was not expecting guests. The boy then remembers the smell of the blue flowers, which makes him feel something special. He turns suddenly, as if he had an idea to solve the situation. The creatures try to stop him, asking him to wait, but Mori does not listen. He runs through the hallway and opens a double door at the end, determined to continue. Carefully, he peers through the crack of the door, curious to see what is inside. His eyes shine with a purple reflection, amazed by the scene he finds. The room is dark, but several golden eyes shine in the darkness, watching the boy. Mori stands still in the middle of the room, looking forward, not knowing what to do. He then remembers his friend's hug, crying with happiness upon finding her mother. The creature with angel wings turns around, and Mori stays there, frozen, waiting for a reaction. Mori remembers his mother, and the image of her hugging him with affection comes to mind. The winged creature stretches out her hand, trying to gently touch the boy's head. But instead of smiling, Mori starts crying, his face all red and swollen. Ryder arrives running and yells his name, worried about what happened there. Mori keeps crying, mouth open in a heartbreaking sob. The winged creature and Ryder stand still, shocked by the boy's reaction. The boy's crying echoes through the mansion, leaving a sad atmosphere in the air. Sometime later, Mori is curled up under a table, still scared and crying. Ryder crawls under the table and tries to cheer him up, inviting him for a snack. He then suggests they draw something and throws himself on the bedroom floor, exhausted. Moria asks Ryder how the boy is, and he says he needs some time. Moria comments that Ryder seems worried, and he says it's the first time he's seen him cry. Ryder confesses that the mother wasn't as good as he imagined, and the angel becomes confused. The creature then introduces herself as Miria, Mori's sponsor, leaving Ryder surprised, and the story reveals that she is the leader of the PAE, the organization behind the symbol. The scene shifts to night, and the moonlight illuminates the room they are in. Mori wakes up in the middle of the night, with a sleepy expression and flushed cheeks. He sits on the bed and sees the robot charging while Ryder sleeps deeply. The boy approaches the demon's bed and watches him sleep, curious. Suddenly, Mori jumps on top of Ryder, who wakes up in shock and screams in pain. The demon grumbles and asks the boy to calm down, but Mori won't stay still. The boy then leaves the room and peeks down the hallway, as if looking for something. He goes down the stairs carefully, exploring the dark mansion in the middle of the night. Mori reaches the kitchen and starts crawling on the floor, looking for food. The boy looks up, cheeks flushed, smelling something tasty. He climbs onto a chair and sees a basket full of green, glowing fruits. Ryder appears and encourages him to try one, saying it's super rare and delicious. Mori tries to grab a fruit, but the basket is too high and he can't reach it. He then uses a chair to climb onto the table and finally manages to grab the fruit. The boy is happy for reaching the fruit. He looks toward the door and sees a strange creature with glowing eyes. Miria grabs a flashlight and walks through the dark library, searching for something. She has long white hair and dark skin. With a serious and mysterious look, the creature begins to sense someone's presence and goes to check. The presence was Mori, who was wandering around. The boy is distracted by a fruit on the table and becomes confused by the situation. He turns around and runs into Miria. Suddenly, several red lasers cut through the room, almost hitting the boy and the creature. Miria becomes terrified, eyes wide in pure shock and fear. She runs and hides behind the door while the lasers continue attacking. One of the fruits falls to the floor, rolling across the dark and silent room. Mori crawls on the floor, hair standing on end, scared by the fruit. Miria looks to the side and sees several fruits scattered across the floor. She picks up the fruit and hides behind the wall, curious about the boy. Mori is behind some crates and ends up falling asleep from exhaustion on the table. The woman watches him from afar with an expression of pity and a touch of sadness. She approaches and leaves the fruit near him, like a silent offering. The fruit rolls across the floor and wakes Mori, who jumps up startled. He looks at the fruit on the floor and follows its trail with wide-open eyes. The fruit keeps rolling, as if guiding him somewhere. Mori reaches out, trying to grab the fruit that lured him out of hiding. The woman watches from the darkness, surprised by the boy's reaction. The boy then grabs the fruit and bites it eagerly. He then runs out, clumsy, trying to take a few more fruits with him. Meanwhile, Miria watches everything and throws another fruit to the boy. The little boy doesn't notice anything and keeps chewing the fruit, very satisfied. Miria focuses her gaze on him, her eyes shining in the darkness. Then Miria hides behind the door, spying on the boy without making any sound. The scene pulls back, showing the empty room with the starry night through the window. Then we see the kitchen, with fruit remains on the floor marking someone's passage. Lying on the floor, one of the siblings whispers to the others to stay quiet so they don't wake him, but the other, very curious, suddenly appears shouting that he also wants to take a look. One of the siblings wonders why the kitchen is such a mess like that. Then little Mori runs and clings to the leg of someone who has just arrived. He then looks up with a cute face, seeming very surprised by the visitor. It was Ryder, and his robot warns that little Mori needs to wash his dirty face. The little boy remains clinging to his leg, with no intention of letting go of his friend. Ryder picks him up, pretending to be angry, but the drone comments that his body is honest. Then the little robot begins giving an important message to Mori about what happened yesterday. The scene shifts to a room, and someone serves tea while explaining that their friend has already left. Sitting there, Ryder thanks for the help because he didn't know how to express his gratitude. In response, the hooded being simply places a mysterious black box on the table. Ryder stares at the box for a moment, and the other tells him to open the gift already. He then opens the box and an intense light shines from inside, completely surprising him. Inside the box there is a fragment of a star that glows with incredible beauty. He is shocked and wonders what that is, realizing it is a very rare item. In panic, he calculates the value, thinking the piece must be worth at least 60,000. He cries with emotion, imagining himself with his arms up and shouting that he is rich. The man thanks him for the work and Ryder laughs, remembering little Mori. But soon his smile fades and he becomes thoughtful about the moments he lived. He remembers when he protected the little boy from flying monsters in a dark cave, and also when they cooked and how the boy took care of him when he was injured. With these memories, Ryder lets out a sigh, realizing something changed inside him. The scene cuts to little Mori sleeping peacefully, with a smile on his face. Meanwhile, the little robot tries to get Ryder's attention, who seems distant. Suddenly, he says he still doesn't want to leave, leaving the woman confused. He tries to explain, saying that Mori likes him a lot and he cannot abandon him. He tries to hide it, saying he thought about staying by Mori's side until he gets used to it. The woman then asks if he would really do that for them, seeming quite surprised. Ryder gets excited and shouts that of course, because they have been through a lot together. But suddenly he becomes confused, not understanding what is going on in the room. Then a shadowy creature appears behind him, making the poor guy scream in fear. The woman then introduces the figure, saying he is her assistant, Jill. She apologizes for the rudeness, explaining that he thought Ryder was a kidnapper. The little robot becomes suspicious, questioning whether that is really the truth. Ryder covers Mori's ears, but the drone asks why, since he does not understand. Then he lies down with the boy and tells him to take a look around while they talk. The little robot agrees with the idea, calling Mori to go explore the place with him. The little boy turns around and leaves the room, letting the adults talk alone. The scene shifts to a huge hall, and the woman welcomes Ryder. She invites him to sit wherever he wants, and he says they can start the meeting already. The woman goes straight to the point, revealing that they still couldn't contact Shalom. Ryder is confused and asks who the hell this Shalom is. He gets irritated with the creatures, shouting that even he knows the judge. How do they not? A narration explains that the judge is the master of the land and possesses 7 great powers. The woman then reveals that Shalom is actually one of those 7 powerful beings. She also says that Jili's black hole power was a gift given by him. An energy map appears on the floor, showing the vast domain that belongs to Shalom. A finger points to the map, indicating that Mori's shelter was right in the middle of the forest. Since it was in his area, they needed permission to enter, but couldn't get it. She explains they also didn't receive any news about Mori, and that's why they took so long to act, but one of the creatures says Shalom is just a very busy person, and it's nothing serious. The woman warns she will keep trying to send the messages, maintaining a serious posture. She then asks Ryder to stay with Mori until they manage to contact him, and he agrees immediately. But one of the creatures approaches and asks if the real meeting will start now. Ryder gets goosebumps, not understanding this talk about a real meeting. Then, one of the beings arrives bringing a little tray with toy utensils. He grabs the tiny fork, becoming completely confused by that bizarre situation. Then he asks what that is, and the creature explains it is a utensil made for Mori. Ryder gets irritated, shouting that it is too small, but the other says Mori is tiny. The creature defends itself, saying it made several other items and calls everyone to show them. They present a giant bed, saying it is perfect for Mori, who loves staying underneath it. Two of them approach excited, asking what he thinks of the creations. Ryder gives a little laugh, thinking to himself that these people are really enthusiastic. The scene shifts to Mori, who is alone holding a strange object in his little hand. He explores the place, which is a huge hall full of windows and writings on the ceiling. With his little robot, he opens the door and goes out to the balcony, ready to explore more. Mori and his little robot keep exploring the house, passing through the kitchen full of food. The robot then teaches him the names of things like the lamp and the flower vase. Then little Mori keeps pointing at everything, curious to learn every detail of the place. The little robot becomes confused by the scene, but soon starts scanning the entire environment around them. He warns that there are leftover materials, and Mori climbs onto the chair to see better. The little boy climbs on the table and finds strange sketches, not understanding what they are. Then the robot explains that it seems to have been made by hand, making Mori even more curious. He then clarifies that he is talking about Mori's blanket, leaving the boy very surprised. The boy looks at his own cape, beginning to understand what those drawings mean. They were the designs of his blanket, and he sees the image of someone who made it for him. We see a close-up of Mori's eyes, which shine with the new discovery about the blanket. In that moment, one of the creatures finds him and asks if he really is the famous boy Mori. She says she is very happy that he is safe, because it was a struggle to stop Miria from leaving. The creature asks what they are doing, and the drone replies that they were exploring the mansion. The robot finds the house strange there, but she explains that Miss Miria built everything by herself. She continues, saying that Miria just wanted a way to try to understand him better. The scene shifts to Mori, who now spies on the mysterious woman from behind a door. He stays there watching in silence with his big eyes, full of curiosity about her. But suddenly the woman turns in his direction, and the little boy runs away scared. He passes by her like lightning, while the woman only watches him standing near the window. The woman gets a bit embarrassed about the situation, while Ryder observes everything from afar. He becomes thoughtful, trying to find a way to fix that awkward atmosphere between the two. The scene cuts to the mansion, showing that they have a long road ahead. Then Ryder has the idea that for now, it would be better if they became friends. The woman agrees, but the drone asks if Ryder has any good idea for that. Suddenly a light bulb turns on, and one of the creatures appears with a brilliant plan. And so begins the Operation Friendship with Mori, with the first step being to use snacks. The woman tries to approach, calling Mori and offering him some cookies, but the other creatures arrive first and already fill the boy with cookies and affection. Ryder eats a cookie and says this is easy, announcing the next step of the plan. The second step of the plan is to show interest in the boy's favorite items. In that, the woman decorates herself with Mori's things, thinking the idea is perfect. Ryder tells her to walk near him, while the drone notices one of the boy's drawings. She walks beside Mori, who eats a cookie, and he notices the items on her clothes. The boy becomes terrified, and she apologizes and says she will return what she took. The third idea is to use a familiar appearance, and Ryder bets on his bike to impress. He asks his robot to bring the bike, and the small machine materializes the vehicle instantly. Ryder then teaches the woman to ride it, telling her to hold tight and press a button. But the bike shoots off at full speed, taking Miria and leaving the creatures desperate. The plan goes wrong again, and Mori now pilots the robot as they move to the next one. The fourth challenge begins. They need to recreate how they became friends, but they seem confused. Then the duo arranges the reenactment. One will be the villain, and the other saves the boy. Little Mori is sitting alone when suddenly a sinister figure appears in front of him. Seeing the scene unfold, the demon warns that the time to act has come. In that moment, the improvised hero bursts into the room yelling Mori's name to scare the villain. But the plan goes wrong because the boy has already knocked out the enemy alone, leaving everyone shocked. The villain gets up irritated, complaining that the agreement was just intimidation. After several failed attempts, the scene shifts to a dark and rainy night. Now the little boy is already in his bed, sleeping deeply and peacefully. He seems to be in a very heavy sleep, resting calmly after a busy day. Suddenly, he begins to have a nightmare with soldiers and a disturbing vision. The boy wakes up in a jump, sweating cold and with eyes wide open in pure panic. He is looking around the dark room, still trembling in fear. A strong lightning bolt lights up the room, followed by a loud noise of something breaking outside. Very scared, the boy gets out of bed and goes to investigate the source of that sound. Meanwhile, in another room, Ryder is very focused, working on a holographic panel. The little boy walks alone through the dark hallway, passing by an old clock and a window. He curls up in fear, trembling while hugging his own body to feel safe. Then he sees a light coming from a half-open door and decides to peek carefully. Inside, he finds Miria relaxing in a rocking chair in front of the fireplace. The woman seems very calm, with a serene smile on her face, enjoying the warmth of the fire. The little boy hides behind a bookshelf, observing the books scattered on the floor. He finds a book about observing children and does not understand anything he is reading. With great caution, the boy decides to approach from behind the chair, walking very slowly. But suddenly, the boy becomes completely paralyzed with fright, and then he finally manages to place himself on Miria's lap. On her lap, the boy was still a little scared. Miria hugs him, and little by little his fear begins to fade. Now calmer, Mori looks up with his big eyes, full of curiosity. The boy then nestles into her lap, feeling a familiar and comfortable scent. Miria continued sleeping. While the boy was on her lap, he settles into her arms, feeling totally safe and protected there. In that moment, the little one lifts his head and stares at the figure with his bright and curious eyes. His huge eyes reflect the firelight, while an idea begins to form. In that moment he understands everything and thinks that that figure is like a mother to him. Time passes quietly, with the sound of the fireplace warming the comfortable environment. Suddenly the woman wakes up startled, realizing she ended up falling asleep. She thinks it is already late and that she needs to return to her own room soon. But when she looks down, she is shocked to see that the little boy fell asleep on her lap. She panics, wondering why Mori is there and since when. Desperate, she thinks about what to do and considers calling Ryder and Aya for help. But the boy moves, so she decides to stay quiet so she doesn't wake him. Seeing the boy snoring softly, her expression calms and she watches him sleep. With that, the woman hugs him gently, deciding to take care of him for now. She remains seated in the rocking chair, watching over the little boy's sleep near the fire. The scene shifts to the next day, with Ryder waking up and letting out a huge yawn. A small floating robot congratulates him on the job, but warns that it took longer than expected. In that moment, an overload alert appears, and Ryder remembers that he strained the system some time ago. He then decides not to overdo it for now, and the robot agrees with his order. Suddenly, several people appear and cheerfully greet Ryder with a good morning. He gets a bit embarrassed by the warm reception, not knowing exactly how to react. One of the maids asks if he slept well, finding it strange that he woke up so early. At that moment, a notification warns that the mail has arrived, leaving Ryder thoughtful. Another maid appears carrying a barrel, looking very happy with the task. Ryder then offers to get the mail, and the maid thanks him for the help. He asks them to take the things to Miria and runs toward the front door. Arriving there, he grabs the envelope and sees a danger poster with several creatures. The robot comments that the print came out well, despite a strange noise it made. In that moment, the woman suddenly appears calling for Ryder, while he has a strange reaction. Ryder greets Miria awkwardly, saying that she seems in a good mood today. He then asks if she will be busy, but Miria replies that she has plenty of time. Excited, he says that's great because he needs help with Mori's clothes. But then he remembers an important detail. He is now a wanted man. Ryder panics because he was so focused on Mori that he completely forgot about that. Miria then suggests that they get ready to go out, making the demon even more nervous. Desperate, he asks her to wait and asks where they are going. She calmly replies that they are going to the center, leaving him confused. Ryder begins to sweat cold, asking if she is talking about the city center. With a huge smile, the woman confirms that yes, leaving the demon terrified. He realizes he is completely doomed, already imagining the danger he will face. The scene shifts to a fancy store, where several attendants welcome them. They enter a very wide and white place, with a very minimalist decoration. Ryder asks what place this is, and she explains that it is where she has her clothes made. An attendant shows a virtual model, warning that they can test and modify it on the spot. The attendant explains that since they make custom clothes, the client needs to go in person. He says that human clothes are rare, so he preferred to leave the work to real professionals. Mori gets a little scared, but the strange beings say they already expected that. In that moment, the attendant reveals that she has already received instructions and shows several treats to him. Mori's eyes shine immediately, completely enchanted with all those delicious things. Ryder scolds him, saying it is dangerous to act like that, but Mori was already being taken away. Miria goes after Mori. Ryder is shocked to see a portal, thinking that rich people are different. He then asks his robot where the cameras are, beginning to analyze the place. The robot warns that scanning is difficult because of the strong security measures in the place, but she detects one lens behind him, two in front, and guards outside. He begins to think about what to do, considering staying quiet and just going back to the mansion later, or he could simply pack his things and leave that dangerous place. Suddenly, the curtain opens and little Mori appears in a bear costume with honey. Ryder finds it extremely cute, but the robot asks why he seems so irritated. The robot asks why she is crying, and Miria covers her face, moved by the cuteness. She then gets an idea and shows a new look on the panel, asking what they think of it. In that moment, little Mori appears in an angel outfit, looking like a true work of art. Miria is left breathless with so much cuteness, and the robot comments that it seems she really liked it. Excited, Ryder tells her to let him try too, thinking he can do even better, and the result is Mori dressed as a rocker, with a leather jacket and a skull motorcycle. Ryder celebrates, but the robot says the two have no sense and that now it's his turn. With that, the boy appears in a futuristic outfit full of lights and a technological helmet. Everyone is impressed, and the robot says it turned out perfect and that they can continue now. Miria then picks up the little one in her arms, looking very happy with the choice. Ryder also holds Mori in his arms, who takes the chance to eat a delicious cookie, but he remembers the wanted poster and yells that it wasn't really his fault. He tries to justify himself, saying that he shot the city because Mori was kidnapped. Then he turns to Miria, saying that he has something very important to say now. Ryder gathers his courage and decides that he will reveal everything at once, no more excuses. He remembers the kidnapper asking how someone dangerous like him could raise a human. That question left him thoughtful, with a very serious and slightly shaken expression. Suddenly, a voice warns that the guides will help him find the way out. With that, Ryder begins to sweat cold, realizing he is being kicked out of the mansion. He looks at Miria and then at Mori's bag, completely without reaction. Ryder tries to change the subject and asks about the letter she wrote to Mori, wanting to know what it meant. Miria then turns to him with a serious posture, seeming to think about the answer. She then hands him a photograph, leaving Ryder totally confused by the gesture. He looks at the image and sees only a green field with a blue sky, and something small on the hill. Miria explains that the thing in the photo is Mori, leaving Ryder shocked by the revelation. She then says that, as usual, she was analyzing some documents and received a letter from Shalom. The scene shifts to the past, showing that she thought it was a pamphlet and almost ignored it, but the paper begins to shine and she decides to take a look at what was inside. In that moment, a strong light transports her to a green field, completely surprising her. She then realizes that it was a video, and sees herself in the same place as the photo she showed. In the video, she spots the orphanage, and then something small on the hill, not understanding what it was. But looking more closely, she notices someone sitting there on the grass. It was little Mori, and the sight of that cute child left her completely stunned. She becomes amazed, thinking how something could be so round and perfect like that. The video then ends, and she explains that that was exactly what she thought at the time. Miria holds the photo gently, remembering that first moment when she saw him. With a small smile, she turns to him, finishing the story of how everything began. She then explains that they filmed from afar because Mori was scared of the camera and was looking at an ant. Ryder asks if the story isn't a bit boring, but she says no, leaving him embarrassed. He stays silent for a moment and thinks that this is a good beginning for them. He then grumbles, comparing himself to someone else, but doesn't finish the sentence. The scene returns to the store, and an attendant suggests a type of fabric for Mori's pants. Suddenly the lights go out, and Miria apologizes, saying she will turn them back on now. In that moment, a very strong light illuminates Mori's face, leaving him completely paralyzed. His eyes widen in panic, while sweat runs down his frightened face. He then stares at a giant ring of light on the ceiling, surrounded by scary statues. The boy becomes terrified, as if he were reliving a very deep trauma. Without thinking twice, he turns and starts running desperately to get away from there. He shoots toward the exit, trying to escape that place as fast as possible. Ryder and Miria have no idea what is happening, completely surprised by the boy's reaction. The little one runs past a tall and shadowy figure without even looking back. But in his haste, he ends up tripping badly and falling hard onto the stone floor. Fallen on the ground, he looks up with an expression of pure terror on his face. The figure is revealed, and it was just one of the attendants with a lamp head. Seeing the scene, Ryder runs shouting Mori's name, desperate about the situation. The robot shouts, warning that if Ryder goes out now, he will be discovered. But he doesn't care about the warning and shoots outside, running through the futuristic city. With a serious face, he only thinks about reaching Mori before something bad happens. In that moment, a city security drone appears, doing its routine patrol. The robot's light turns red, indicating that it detected an intruder in the perimeter. The reflection in Ryder's eye shows that he realized he was spotted by security. Suddenly, Miria grabs him from behind, pulling him with surprising strength. She then holds him and extends her hand, seeming to use some kind of power. The scene shifts to a cosmic space, with Mori floating among magical blue flowers. Back in the store, Ryder shouts Mori's name, who finally wakes up from the trance. Worried, they ask if he is okay, and if he hurt himself anywhere during the fall. The robot warns that his pulse is racing, while Ryder examines him desperately. With his eyes full of tears, little Mori begins to cry, unable to stop. Using her power, Miria transports all of them back to a safe and dark place. The scene darkens, and the image shifts to his tiny hand holding one of the letters he received. Back in the room, the little boy now sleeps peacefully, with both of them taking care of him. Miria becomes thoughtful and comments that the problem doesn't seem to be just because of the light. Ryder agrees, explaining that the light from his weapon is much stronger and never caused this. The robot reminds them that even when Ryder set everything on fire, Mori didn't have this reaction. She then reveals the reason they use more candles than electric light in the mansion. She explains that it was because of the records, which said that Mori's friend used candles. The robot confirms, showing that Mori reacts to spotlights, and Ryder remembers the cave. In that moment, he realizes that the store light was also a very strong circular beam, right? Miria becomes thoughtful, understanding that the circular light was the cause of all the panic. The scene changes, and we see the trio researching ways to help Mori with his trauma. They gather to read a book, trying to find a solution to the little boy's problem. Meanwhile, little Mori stays on the floor drawing, completely unaware of all the confusion. At night, the maids take Mori to a dark room, carefully surrounding the boy. The boy sits on the floor, and the servants prepare a shadow play for him to watch. Then the robot begins telling the story of the three little pigs, starting the show. Little Mori pays close attention to the story, his little eyes shining with curiosity. The story continues, saying that in the forest also lived a very clever wolf. The wolf then watched from hiding, while the pigs built their own houses. Hidden, Ryder observes the whole scene with a little smile, finding the situation funny. The scene changes, and he asks what a shadow play is, not understanding the plan. Miria then explains that they will start with a square and safe beam of light, and little by little, they will switch to circular light, while Mori gets distracted with the play. Back at the theater, the little boy watches the play, seeming much more comfortable now. The light becomes circular, with Ryder and Miria making the shadows of the wolf and the little pig. Thus, they create happy memories, and Mori is left with his eyes full of emotion. The robot then stops the reading, and says that he has one more thing to show. He reveals a drawing that Mori made of the three of them, looking like a family photo. The little machine remembers when he drew that, and becomes a bit embarrassed. The story shifts, and the robot narrates that the little pigs decided to work together. The robot continues, saying that they agreed on the budget and the construction area, and with the builder's experience, Ryder understands nothing about that story. They then build a superhouse to fight against the wolf, leaving Ryder shocked. Mori is left open-mouthed, totally impressed with the twist in the story. The little boy then lets out a delighted laugh, having lots of fun with the play. Ryder stares at the scene, still unable to believe what he just watched there. Miria is also left open-mouthed, surprised by the boy's positive reaction. The two then look at each other, and Ryder gives a small smile, happy the plan worked. but suddenly a distant voice yells for them to stop fighting right now. The scene shifts, and a shoe is thrown as someone walks down a shadowy hallway. The mysterious figure approaches some statues and orders them to call Miria. The scene cuts to the next day, with little Mori slowly waking up in bed. The story explains that the child opened his eyes because the strong sunlight woke him. The little robot appears flying and gives a very cheerful good morning to Mori, who is sleepy. The boy rubs himself against the robot, and he comments that the child woke earlier than usual. He stretches all over the bed, looking very happy and full of energy to start the day. The little boy then rolls across the bed, stands up and starts peeking over the mattress. With his big eyes, he stares at something on the other side of the room, very curious. He then begins crawling across the bed, heading toward what caught his attention. But suddenly he finds an obstacle in the way and becomes a bit confused. It was Ryder, who hugs him and asks to sleep just 10 more minutes, very sleepy. The little one then gets off the bed, letting the demon rest a bit longer in the room. He goes to the door and Ryder wakes up grumbling, not understanding what's happening. With his yellow boots, the little boy leaves the room and begins exploring the hallway. The maids find him and ask if he slept well, worried about the boy. One of the servants gets startled and warns him that it's dangerous to run around alone. But he doesn't listen and opens a door, entering an unknown room of the mansion. He reaches his tiny hands out and finds Miria, who welcomes him with open arms and a smile. The story explains that it has been a month since the child began living there in the mansion. The scene shows his little feet covered in flour, indicating that he got into trouble. He then throws the flour into the air, making a huge mess and having fun with it. One of the maids screams in despair, because she had just cleaned that entire hallway. The little robot then asks Mori if he is hungry, and the boy nods his head. Suddenly, several maids appear at the door, shouting if he is really hungry. The robot then activates a filter, and the boy begins to glow, looking irresistible. Seeing that scene, the servant becomes shocked and wide-eyed, not knowing what to do. Without wasting time, the head maid begins chopping vegetables at an absurd speed. She then prepares an incredible meal, with a presentation worthy of a king. Then several spoons fly toward Mori, who opens his mouth to eat everything. Satisfied and full, the little boy floats around the room, all happy and relaxed. The mysterious figure approaches, and Mori faces her with his face dirty with flour. She then takes him to the sink and holds him to wash his face carefully. But she pours too much water, and the robot complains that she's washing him like laundry. After the bath, the little boy peeks through a door and sees Miria working at the desk. She looks like a true goddess, with a radiant aura and elegant posture. With shining eyes, Mori becomes enchanted by her beauty and dedication. Ryder arrives and praises the boy, calling him a very diligent and studious student. The scene shows Miria and Mori sitting on the floor, surrounded by drawings and books. Ryder then asks what the two are doing, and she explains that they are copying words, but the robot warns that all the drawings are wrong, leaving Ryder embarrassed. Miria defends the drawing, and the robot says her judgment is also being influenced. The little boy then grabs the book, and the robot offers to read the story to him. He begins reading about a phenomenon called pyrop, and the boy pays close attention. Ryder explains that he already talked about that before, but doesn't know all the details. Miria then explains that when the lifespan ends, the cells prepare to return. She continues, saying that they can divide from one to one, or from one to many. The woman reveals that she came from the judge's fourth finger, and that Shalom is probably the first. She then smiles and asks if the explanation isn't a bit difficult for Mori. The two observe the little boy, who glows with a yellow light, looking focused. Suddenly a person enters the room shouting, with a panicked expression. It was one of the servants, yelling that Mori was scribbling on the wall again. He then hands a cloth to the boy and tells him to clean the whole mess himself. With her eyes full of tears, the maid mocks him, thinking he wouldn't cry. Miria scolds him, and Geely warns that he will tell everything if he doesn't stop disobeying. Suddenly a notice says that the mail has arrived, and Ryder yells that he will get it. He shoots down the hallway, leaving Miria surprised by his speed and excitement. The woman stands still in the hallway, not understanding his reaction. Ryder then returns with a golden envelope, all sweaty and happy for having helped. She thanks him, and he replies all embarrassed, feeling like the hero of the day. He then comments that, luckily there wasn't any wanted poster with it. Miria calls him, and he replies all awkward, stuttering a hi. She then asks if they can talk a little, with a serious and somber voice. He becomes tense, with a drop of sweat running down, not knowing what to expect from the conversation. Ryder starts freaking out, wondering what is happening, and if he saw something wrong. He follows her down the hallway, thinking if she noticed something suspicious about him. The demon then decides that it's better if he talks first, before the situation gets worse, but she interrupts him, and tells him to look at what she has in her hand to show. Miria reveals that it is a stone that opens the judge's chamber door. Ryder is completely shocked and speechless, with his eyes wide in surprise. She then explains that she finally managed to get in contact with the judge. Ryder becomes paralyzed, with rain falling in the background, reflecting his despair. He stutters the judge's name, sweating cold with pure fear of what may happen. The demon wonders if she reported him, and how long she has known everything. But Miria surprises him, asking if he has ever thought about joining her organization. He becomes completely confused, not understanding anything she is proposing. She notices the confusion and asks if it was too sudden, leaving him embarrassed. Miria then explains that she asked the judge to make Mori an official member of the group. She continues, saying that although she has no news from Shalom, they will probably like it. Ryder yells for her to wait, and the woman explains that this way she can protect him too. He then asks how long she knew, and Miria reveals it was from the beginning. He asks why she let a fugitive enter, and she says that Mori depended on him. She continues, saying she could overpower him if something happened, and he agrees awkwardly. Miria then recalls the story of how he met Mori, and he becomes thoughtful. Ryder understands that getting rid of the person would be easy, but wouldn't solve his problem. She then holds his hand, in a gesture of trust and partnership between them. The woman says that life may be less exciting, but she still wants him to stay. With a sincere look, she asks him to stay with them, to take care of little Mori. Miria then suggests that he seriously think about it, leaving the decision to him. The demon looks at her from the side, and agrees to think about the proposal, a bit shy. When leaving the room, he finds Mori sleeping on the floor and asks why he is there. He then picks the boy up, and the robot asks why he is staring at him. The two little robots float around, asking why he has that expression. The robot asks if something good happened, and Raider yells that no, completely embarrassed. He then straightens Mori's clothes, preparing him for an important event. The demon says he looks tidy, and the boy says he tried hard to make a good impression. The scene changes, and the maids gather around Miria, all nervous and anxious. Mori approaches Ryder, who is sitting on the floor, looking a bit tense. The demon stares at him with a serious look, as if he were about to say something important. Ryder then calls Mori, who turns immediately, paying attention to his friend. He offers to take care of the boy's bag, and picks the object up to take a look. He takes the crystal out of the bag and warns that he cannot go with the boy. Ryder then places the necklace around Mori's neck, with a very serious expression. With a smile, he says that he will be nearby, trying to reassure the boy. Mori holds the crystal tightly, looking more confident and ready for whatever comes. Miria warns him that he can postpone if it seems difficult, and asks if he will be okay. The two then look at each other, in a moment of tension and shared understanding before the meeting. The woman throws the stone upward, and it begins to shine with a golden light. A black portal appears in the middle of the room, and everyone gathers around, ready to go. Miria explains that she needs to go ahead, and asks the two to wait and follow the plan. With his little yellow boot, the boy takes a step forward, ready to enter the portal. He then enters the portal, crossing the dark barrier with great courage. The scene cuts, and the little boy finds himself in a dark and imposing room with two statues. Meanwhile, Ryder and the others watch everything through a holographic screen. Miria walks through the hall, which has giant columns and other hooded figures. She then touches a symbol on the floor, and the stones begin to levitate around her. The maids grow worried, but Ryder reassures them, saying that everything is fine. Suddenly, a giant cosmic entity appears in front of her, calling her name. Ryder is left open-mouthed, realizing that the colossal creature is the judge himself. Miria walks toward the entity with a calm and respectful posture. Miria waves, and the creature seems to respond to the call. Giles advises him to look only at Miria and move forward, without averting his gaze. The little boy then stops in the middle of a circle of light, ready for his presentation. He holds the crystal tightly, watching the figure walk away and leave him alone. Through the screen, Ryder and the servants celebrate, saying that the shadow play worked. With firm steps, little Mori begins to walk toward his objective. Miria waits for him in the middle of the cosmic space, with a serious and imposing posture. The boy keeps walking, with a determined expression and full of courage on his face. He then approaches one of the hooded figures, who seems to be a guard. The creature looks down at him, with a ring of light shining on its mysterious face. The circular light reflects in his eye, and he remembers the trauma he experienced in the shop. Triggered by the trauma, the little boy stumbles and falls hard onto the dark floor. Through the screen, Ryder and the servants watch the scene with wide, panicked eyes. Miria screams his name, desperate, while Giles only observes the situation. The guard approaches the boy, who remains fallen and frightened on the hall's floor. He then extends his hand and asks if the boy is okay, trying to help him stand, but Mori pulls away, with a sweaty face and an expression of pure fear and distrust. The hooded creature tries to approach again, with its face shining in the darkness. Miria notices something wrong and yells for him to wait, trying to stop the contact. The ring on the guard's face begins to shine with rainbow colors, looking distorted. Miria warns him not to touch the boy, but it is already too late to intervene. In an act of desperation, Mori bites the guard's hand with all his strength. The creature screams, asking what he is doing, and orders him to stop that now. The guard screams in pain, while Mori keeps biting with a wild rage. Seeing the scene, Miria stretches out her hand, preparing to use her powers and intervene. She then creates a small black hole, ready to resolve the situation at once. One of the statues warns that using that power inside is not allowed. Suddenly, an invisible force pulls Miria away. Without giving her time to react, the scene cuts, showing the boy being struck by a beam of golden energy. Ryder and Miria stare wide-eyed, shocked by the power of the entity. Little Mori then faints, with his crystal necklace shining intensely. He is sucked into a portal, disappearing into the darkness of the hall. Miria watches the scene powerless, while the boy is taken far from her. With a sweaty face, she laments what happened, feeling guilty for the situation. The judge then announces that the situation needs to be explained, with an imposing voice. Back at the mansion, Ryder shouts in outrage, calling all that a great absurdity. Miria faces him with a serious expression and repeats the word absurdity. She explains that they think Mori is unstable, and that the fault may be hers. Because of that, they decided to keep him in the judge's territory, and Ryder becomes enraged. Miria remains silent, with a sad look, seeming to agree with the decision. She remembers the scene of Mori biting the guard, confirming the boy's instability. The memory of the guard appears, and Miria wonders why the search team is there. Back in the present, she faces the judge, not understanding the reason for that meeting. The scene cuts, and one of the creatures questions how a human managed to get there. They do not believe that a child of that age could have traveled alone. Meanwhile, the servants ask what Ryder is seeing, and he explains about the judge. Miria faces the entity and asks them to be honest about what is going on. The creature then accuses her of having sent a servant to take the boy from the shelter. Miria is shocked and denies it, shouting that Mori left the shelter on his own. The judge questions how such a small child managed to cross the border. She then reveals that she made special clothes for him, and that is why he managed to pass. The entity asks if she did it on purpose, and Miria yells no, not at all. She defends herself, saying she only wanted him to grow up healthy and protected. Miria explains that she sent a servant to look for him, since she had received no news for months. She continues, saying that a traveler brought him to the city, without giving more details. The creature then asks where this traveler is now. Miria begins to explain, with a serious and slightly nervous expression. Ryder follows everything through the screen, with a worried look at how things are unfolding. She reveals that the traveler is no longer in the city, making the situation more complicated. The judge asks if there is no way to prove it, and Miria confirms that there is not, with no way out. The entity then reminds them that the traveler lost sight of the child in the city center, and that the boy was almost kidnapped by a citizen, which left him very frightened. The creature continues, saying that he used force and could have gotten hurt. Miria admits she was careless, feeling guilty for everything that happened. The judge then decides that the human does not qualify, and must be sent back. Miria tries to argue, asking them to take the child's emotional state into account. She screams, saying that the human area is different, and that he would not survive. The creature then asks about the human, and what he can do to fend for himself. The judge questions whether Miria also thinks he cannot communicate properly. She then defends Mori, saying that he can express his emotions clearly. The entity says it will consider it, and that the judge will prioritize his happiness. After the tense meeting, Miria prepares to leave the judge's chamber, very tired, but suddenly a shadowy voice calls her, coming from a dark and mysterious mist. The scene shifts, and she floats through a cosmic space with cities hovering in the background. A powerful voice declares that that is an order from the judge, and the scene focuses on her and Mori. In a vision of the past, she offers a book to the little one, and hugs him tightly. The voice asks whether she will endure the end, since they do not live forever like she does. The memory then reveals Miria crying as she embraces a person with white hair. So that's it, guys. If you like the works we bring here, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to support us. That way we can bring more videos to you. See you next time.